Hello and welcome to Mad Old Goes Racing, and today we are in Automobilista 2 having a look at the release candidates. Now first off I'm going to go through what has changed since the last beta, and then we'll have a look at a few menus, see what you are going to get with your early access, because of course when I said release candidate I meant release candidate for the early access. Should try using the English once in a while. Right, let's have a look at the changelog. Right, content-wise, added the Fusca model to the Copa Classic FL and the Uno to Copa Classic B. And that is... which one's that? Right, that's the Uno. And that's the Fusca, which is basically a Volkswagen Beetle with something hanging out the back of it. Right, UI and HUD, updated showroom scene, so we might as well make use of that and have a look at this whilst we're here. Oh, that's shiny. That's a hell of a wing, isn't it? Like I said the other day, they presumably are going to add a few options to be able to control things a bit. I don't have anything. I'll press some buttons and see what happens. No, not a lot. So presumably they're going to have the usual ability to zoom in and out. I assume if I scroll the mouse, no, that doesn't do anything either. So that will come later, I am assuming. Looks nice at the moment though, I'll have to say. Oh, it's got my age. Isn't that handy? Next, multiplayer lobby list now displays class in use or multi-class instead of host name. Well, one or two people saying it was sort of nobody cares what the host is called, they want to know what's in it, and preferably without having to go in it to look. So fair enough. Sorted cart models into their own separate classes, which if we scroll down here you will now see this cart. So that's 125cc, presumably that's single speed. Yep, a 1-speed sequential. I'm thinking about it. Are you thinking about it? I'm thinking about it. GX390 race, GX390 rental, and then 125 shifter, because of course there is the, wherever it's gone, supercard as well, which I do like that as like the Superman symbol almost for the supercard. Yeah, I'll calm down in a minute. Fixed menu direction on some tabs in game controls menu. I'm assuming there was something a bit weird with some of the tabs in the... I'm assuming it means in the setup controls menu. So, here. So whether there was something weird happening with some of the tabs across there. Fixed invisible front third spring bump stop setting. I'm sure they're doing this deliberately to make my English sound crap. Added monitor screen to spectate sessions. I'm assuming that's when you're sitting in the pits, you can then see AI or other players in MP, which is always nice. If only to try and work out how to flaming over there so much quicker than you are. Added time acceleration info and button in session overview. Always nice to know that you're going to suddenly find it's going dark in about 2 minutes flat. Added monitor plus skip to in buttons to simulation screen. Always nice to know that you can get out of a 30-minute practice session after only 10 minutes and hope that it does some sort of calculation on what the AI, presumably in this point, should have done. Added session countdown to more in-game screens. Always nice to know how long you got left. especially in this day and age. Fixed aspect ratio of classes on opponent select dialogue. I'll have to think about that one. Several presentation updates. Whip. Added immersion 2 soundtrack to user interface. As you might have noticed, I've turned the music off. You can turn it on. I just don't go a bundle on music when I'm driving, even in a real car. Rules. Oh, those sort of rules. I'm thinking measures. Slightly laxed calculations for gaining advantage by going off track. So, presumably when you go off track, you have to be a bit more. I've gone completely off track before they start calculating that you should be giving something back. So it's not going to go instantly, oh, give it back. And then you've only got to give back like a millionth of a second, but it's going to take you three corners to get there, sort of thing. So hopefully everybody will be going, oh, that's much better than Project Cars 2. If you just stick to the track, you won't have it happen anyway. So lap time no longer invalidated by contact. Again, that's one of those annoying things where, why invalidate a lap time? Because you've hit something. Because they might have hit you rather than you hit them. So your lap time gets invalidated because somebody runs into you. Thanks. It's a bit like getting safety rating demerits because somebody smacked you up the arse. Is that your fault? No, but you still get hit for it. Yeah. Doubled the amount of time to be kicked due to inactivity. 30 to 120. Well, according to my maths, that's quadrupled it. Yeah. Physics. Revised all cars for minor adjustments to tyres, default setup, damage properties and FFB values. As I keep saying, that will keep going and going until they're absolutely happy with every aspect of whatever they're doing, because the Reezer boys are polishers. They polish and polish and polish until everything is shiny. Reading fail. I nearly went into Norman Wisdom mode there. Initial... Oh, God, yeah. People are going, how old are you? Ancient. Initial BOP review to balance performance of cars within each class. More work needed. Adjusted setup ranges for better consistency and disabled redundant fast damper ranges for cars that don't feature it. Yep. If it ain't got a fast damper adjustment, it shouldn't have a fast damper adjustment. Every car will have fast damper adjustment, effectively, because you might only get one damper adjustment and it sort of affects both sides. So you think you're adjusting the slow damper rate, in fact you're only adjusting the damper. So a lot of older vehicles that only had single, for those that even had an adjustment, only had a single damper adjustment, you effectively adjusted both together and then they sort of compensated. Slightly reduced error effects in drafting, so presumably there's a little less tow available. I didn't think it was excessive anyway, but yeah, it might be that I haven't actually driven anything particularly high drag, maybe. Slightly reduced downshift delays, whether that's on all cars or just some. Obviously, if you have an excessive delay on your downshifts, it can have consequences where the engine maybe could drop too many revs and you end up with when you're changing down, which can cause the back end to kick out and all sorts of reasons. AI. Complete AI revision. Whether that means they've finished the AI revision or they've done everything revision, could be one or the other. Fixing most notable discrepancies in performance versus player at 100% difficulty. More extreme ends of the AI strength range still needs further testing. Obviously your best bet is to choose what you think is going to be a good ballpark figure for the majority of people, get your AI sorted for that, and then try and work to get the sort of more extreme ends to fit later, because the bigger the lump in the middle, the more likely you are to do the right thing for the majority. There will always be somebody who says, oh, the AI is too slow, it's too fast, it's too this, too that. Yeah, I'm afraid you can't make it perfect for everybody. Added small amount of AI performance drop on cold tyres. Nothing like coming out of the pits on stone cold tyres and seeing the AI streak off into the distance like they're on freshly heated, all perfect tyres. Increased AI aggression scalers for more racy behaviour. Nothing like a bit of raciness. Increased AI awareness factor to minimise issues with AI hitting player into corners may still happen if speed difference between player and AI is too high. Well, yeah, basically it's the same as a real driver coming up behind you in a multiplayer and forgetting to brake, and by the time he realises he's going to hit you, he's 30, 40 miles an hour too fast into the corner. Shit happens. Tracks. Further fine tuning to climate profiles. Presumably that's so you don't end up with it being 40 plus degrees at Snetterton with an 80 degree track temperature, because although it does get quite hot and quite cold, in fact you can have 4 seasons in one day quite easily at Snetterton. Snetterton's one of those, it's got its own microclimate. I've been roasted there, I've also been frozen to death, and that's just in June. Slightly increased rumble strip noise. Okay, I'll have to turn that down then, because yeah, don't like too much rumbly. Snetterton various fixes and optimisation to bring both layouts to release status. So, presumably there's some distance markers now, so you can actually see where you got to brake. Donington flag position fixes. I'm not sure if that means position of flags within like marshal's posts, or whether that means like the flags along the start-finish straight. We might go to Donington and have a quick look around and see which one it is. Vehicles. Formula Vintage Gen 1 added LODs, fixing disappearing models at lower settings. There's nothing like cars just vanishing in front of you. Do. Martians have beamed them up. Metal Morrow AJR adjusted driver animation for new steering wheel. Always nice to see your driver actually holding the wheel and not doing this with it. A bit of magic. Ultimate GTR Road changed driver animation to manual shifter. Yep, because it's an H pattern and he was doing this. Gauge texture correction added speedometer. Formula Trainer fixed wheel dimensions. Possibly if the wheels are the wrong size, what happens is they are the right size in the physics, they're the wrong size in the model, and you end up with like gaps underneath the wheels where they don't quite touch the ground. It's alright if there's a little bit too much, because you can sort of get away with a tyre going into the tarmac a little, because it just looks like the tyre's deformed, but if it's floating it just looks bizarre. Kart GX390 fixed RBM lead range. Kart rental adjusted protective belt size. Oh, that's the belt round the outside, isn't it? Because it's the old bumper cars. So it's got a big belt round it. Hang on, let's have a look. I'll show you what I mean. Now that we have individual things, we can go straight to that one. There we go. This bit here. That's the belt. So presumably they've adjusted it. Maybe made it a little bit bigger so it's got more chance of colliding with another car and not bouncing into oblivion of it. Sprint race. Fixed cockpit windscreen. Cobra truck fixed cockpit mirrors. They were a bit like bizarre in a couple of cars. They look like everything's gigantic in them, and it's huge and weird. I think I showed that in one of the previous videos. Super V8 fixed cockpit mirrors. I'm saying that very carefully, you notice. Removed obsolete liveries. Formula V10 fixed rain tyres. I think the rain tyres were showing up as slicks, so they look like slicks, although they were actually rain tyres, so it had the wrong tyre model or just the wrong texture on the model. So people were going, I've got slicks on still. No, you've actually got wets. You can feel when you're on slicks in the wet, I can assure you. I've lost my place. Oh, there we are. Formula Classic G1M2 fixed low level LOD, causing car to disappear in the distance. There's another one of those beam me up Scotty. Supercar fixed RPM LED range. So presumably it wasn't quite going up right. I seem to remember the only first couple of LEDs came on. Caterham Super Sport fixed LOD D and a tachometer. Presumably the LOD was a little bit wrong, so there was either something missing off it or it was the wrong LOD or something, so it wasn't quite picking the right level of detail up. Formula V added speedometer and RPM warning light. Formula Classic G3M3 updated display background. Formula V12 added new liveries to complete the field. We have a full field of V12s. Yay! Old stock added remaining liveries to complete the field. Scrolls down. Other tab. Right. Minor update just deployed adds the missing Uno from Cooper Classic B. It's obviously there because we looked at it. Oh, ow, oh, smacked myself on the head. Adjusts AI reactions and slightly toned down performance and aggression scalers, plus engine reliability revisions. So you should now be able to safely enable mechanical failures. Fingers crossed. That's a quote from Renato there. Yeah, this engine damage can be quite interesting. In Project Cars 2, when it was being developed, we had access to all the tools to have a look to see what was happening to the engine mileage. And what happens is some cars, if you get above a certain rev range, suddenly the engine mileage was sort of quite exponentially. So if you were in the red line all the time, the engine mileage would just off a cliff. And others, literally, if you changed down too quick and went more than a few thousand into the red line, it would blow the engine straight away. So that's the sort of thing that should happen. You don't want something that lets you abuse it too much. Obviously, there are situations where you just turn off mechanical failures and you can do what the hell you like. Close all the vents up for your radiator and everything, so you're running around with a 300-degree engine and it going, yes, everything's fine, you know, whereas normally it would have gone, I'm just about to throw my guts up all over the ground, which is what happens for real if your water pump breaks. Been there, done that on a bike, race bike. Destroyed an engine. Expensive, annoying. Right, the other bit here is, let's have a look at what you're going to get. Now, obviously, you're going to get cars to play with and tracks, so we've got a goodly selection of lots and lots of different things you can play with. We've had a look at some of them here already with like V8 supercars. The street car will be the Ultima. Supercar, stock car, that's the Brazilian stock car. The Sprint Race, which is a nice tubular chassis car. P4s, which is the equivalent of something like the Radical. I was going to say Radial. Radical. Then faster versions of similar. P2. Again, that's more your sort of Le Mans prototype cars. Then you get the faster and faster versions. Stock cars, which are the old sort of equivalent of like a 70s, 60s, 70s American stock car. A couple of Mitsubishis. I keep wanting to call them Lanciers. Brain, come on, engage. Carts, 125 shifter, the rental, the GX390 and the 125. They're all really nice. There are a few possible issues with maybe the tyres on the AI, but they'll get fixed. The Ultima in its race trim, a couple of Gen 2 F1 style cars, with the Gen 2 just being the sort of when they went from sort of 1969ish, when they was it 68, somewhere around there they started. Hang on a second. No, I'm fine, thanks. Somebody asked me if I want some hot water for a drink. I've got one. When they started growing wings, and before they went absolutely mad, they were just quite simplistic. Mostly because they didn't actually really know what the hell was happening. There was none of this clever stuff with CAD and everything. Oh, that's pretty. The original first gen vintage stuff, which is sort of mid 60ish. So sort of the sort of thing you'd have seen in the Grand Prix film, 1966. Really nice to drive as well. Couple of Formula V's, which are VW engines, if I remember rightly. The Formula V12, which is, I wouldn't like to say what sort of generation that is, but again, sounds nice, drives nicely. Formula V10, which is like a 2008 spec, something like that. I'd have to look it up, but Formula Ultimate, which is sort of modern Formula 1, effectively sort of 2018, 2019 type spec. That's the trainer, that's the advanced version, which has got a bit more grunt and lives on a set of slicks, and the earlier trainer, which is have they got slightly different power? No, I think they've got the same. Which runs on basically road tyres, so it's got a little less grip and a little less performance. Formula Risa, which is, I'd hate to say what year that is. Is that 2014, 16? Just before they went to the turbos, I think. Yeah, before the current turbo generation came in, that would be what this is. So whichever year that was, because my brain's losing it. Formula Classics, 3 generations of, going various normally aspirated V8, V10, V12s, turbo V6s, some with sequential boxes, some with H patterns. See, that's 6-speed H pattern on that one, which is quite a pain to drive because it's quite very much a case of get through the gears as quick as possible, and that's a V6 turbo, if I remember, whereas these are normally aspirated V8 and, or is it V8 and a V8 or a V8 and a V10. So lots of cars to play with. A couple of Formula 3 cars, and you've got the Uno in its own class. I don't know what the difference is between that Uno and the one in the Copa Classics, but Copa Truck, these things are fun to drive. Basically they're all drift monsters and you just power out of corners completely sideways in them. The Fusca, I don't know, ooh, didn't mean to do that, pressed the wrong button. Basically it's a Volkswagen Beetle, and it's quite slow, but I'm sure it's perfect fun. Some of the most fun you can have in vehicles are not necessarily the ones with lots of power. It's quite often the ones with little power that you really have to work hard at to get the most out of them that are the most fun. Everybody says, oh, I want to jump in the most powerful thing possible. Not necessarily. One of the most fun bikes I ever rode on a racetrack was actually a 1972 250 Honda, which probably had less than 30 brake horsepower, but it was immense fun to ride. You just got yourself tucked in and stayed there through, like, Rich's corner at Snetterton was basically just shut the throttle for a second and open it again. Hardly any lift at all. So right, we've got the Cobra Classic B, or was it the CL? I can't remember. So there's two Cobra Classics. I could do a little bit more explanation of what the different classes are potentially, but then you got your Caterhams. That's the Super Sport, Super Light, Academy, which is the slowest one of the lot, but actually again quite good fun to drive. It's not got particularly fat tyres on it or anything. So, and then the absolutely mental 620R, which weighs very little and goes like stink. I mean, 300 horsepower and 650 kilos in what is effectively a road legal car is quite mental. And then the Arc Camaro, each year old, which is there's the Legends in the UK, and there's a similar. Is this Australian? I think this is an Australian. There's various other series that use something very similar. They're sort of 1300 Yamaha air-cooled motorcycle engines, revving at about 10,000 RPM. I thought they produced about 130 brake horsepower, but they're saying 310 here, so that's slightly strange, but I was sure they were based, unless this one's turboed, of course. Track-wise, nice selection. Adelaide, Modern and 1988. Azure, which is basically Monaco. And this is actually taken from Project Cars 2. It's exactly the same. They might have remodelled the surface a little bit. Otherwise, all the buildings, everything else, the same. So, if you've got a lower end machine and you are thinking you hope to get away with some of the more simplistic modelling circuits, this one might prove a bit of a sticking point. I don't know how much different it is. I'll really got back to back the two and have a look. Brands Hatch, both Grand Prix and the Indy circuit. Cabell Park, again just the full circuit, none of the other options. There are effectively three layer. Well, there's more than three, but basically there's three. There's the Clubman circuit, which just comes round here and then back across this little bit here, and then there's the Woodland circuit, which just is this part here. I hope you can see my mouse, because if you can't, I'm going to feel a bit of a prat. And then there's the full Grand Prix circuit, which has been around for a while. I remember going back to 1977, 78, something like that, going to Cabell Park and watching Barry Sheen and a few other people racing around there. Showing the age again. Campo Grande, that's one of the interesting Brazilian tracks, as are most of the Brazilian tracks. In fact, they're all nice to drive on. Cascavel, I'm going to struggle with some of these pronunciations, so sorry, but this I'm sure is in Race 07 in both formats. The sort of oval, which is not really an oval because it's got this little kink in the bottom of it. Cavallo, which comes in two versions, the long and the slightly less long. Although it's still saying they're both 1.6 kilometres, which is interesting, so I'm assuming that's a bit of a needs sorting. Donington Park, Grand Prix National Circuit. Interesting, because that doesn't change either, so I'm guessing maybe they've forgotten to link the two up. Another Brazilian track. Again, this time with three nice layouts. I think did I drive around this one in one of the previous ones? I quite enjoy this as quite a nice track. Get Poor. That was one of the ones that was added in one of the betas, and we drove around in the wet. That was the one where I was testing out wet and dry. Abara, which is quite a nice longer track. Again, nice and technical, but not stupidly tight. IIyama in all of its different configurations, 72, 88, 2001 and modern. Didn't even have to look, but Interlagos, and that's a telephone, and it's not for me. I thought it might be somebody going, panic, panic, I can't get into a remote somewhere. Interlagos, that's, oh, bugger, done it again. Was it the 88 version? Historic 76. Is that why it's not changing? Because, I was just, ignore me, I'm being a prat. Right, Interlagos, 72 and... Somebody like to give me a clue on how to pronounce that? Hakarapagu Historic. Yeah. Please phonetically spell that, somebody in the comments. Hareth. I can manage that one. Again, I'd like to see it without the little chicane here, because that's a monstrously fast corner. That's a big boy's corner, that is. That's balls the size of cannon balls type corner, that one. Kansai, which of course is Suzuka, in 3 variants, 4 variants, 3 variants. 1, 2, 3, and 4 variants. Yeah, so what's the difference between that one and that one? That's a Grand Prix, West, East, Classic. Spot the difference. I can't spot the difference. Oh, the DRS zone. That's the difference. Okay. That's slightly confusing. Okay, that one's got a DRS zone. Guilami, at the moment that's just the 76. I think they're adding the modern at some point in one of the DLCs. Don't quote me on that. I might be talking out my bum. Laundria, short, long, and the kart circuits. 2 of. They're nice kart circuits. They're nice flow to them. Even though they've got a couple of hairpins, but they're really nice. I think that's probably the kart circuits I like the most so far. Montreal, 88, and modern. Ortona, which is 4 circuits. Yep. Again, you could probably I'd like to see one that's a bit less all hairpins, but then I'm just a miserable old fart. Alton Park, International Island Circuit, Foster's Circuit, and the lovely Classic Circuit, which is basically get rid of them bloody stupid chicanes and go like the clubbers, and you'll need some big balls round that corner, because holy crap, there's not a lot of runoff. So if you do lose your car there, you're in big trouble. Santa Cruz, which is a nice circuit. Snetterton, 200 and 300. Spielberg, it's the modern Grand Prix circuit. The Red Bull Ring, the national version, and the old classic 1974 and the classic 77. And the difference, of course, is the addition of this chicane to catch you out at the end of the straight, so make sure you know which one you're on, because by the time you reach there, you're going like a clap as a hell. Taruma, with and without a little chicane. Velocita, again, there's like the track day version and the race version, and the Velo part, which comes in 2 flavours with this sort of extra lump, like an ear hole on the side here. Virginia, full international, the Grand Circuit, which is like all this twirly bit in the middle, which I don't really like, and the North and South being this tiddly little thing down the bottom here. And then there's this Patriot. Presume that's where they keep the missiles. I'll just go back up here and go, did I make a complete? Yeah, that is different. Which one was I looking at when I went, yeah, it didn't change. No, that one doesn't, does it? Right. I wasn't imagining things. Which other one was it? Can't see it for looking. Yeah, maybe it was just the one. Oh no, that one. Yeah, I wasn't imagining it. Thank God for that. Right, so yeah, loads and loads of tracks, loads and loads of cars. You'll be spending hours and hours and hours just driving around in test days. Now, test day, basically you're playing with yourself. So, don't let the missus catch you. In this, you literally are just driving around by yourself, nobody else on the track, there's no AI, nothing else. Whether they're going to add a version with AI, I don't know. There's nothing that I've seen that would suggest that. So you can drive around by yourself. If you wish to drive around with some AI, then the best thing to do is actually use a practice session from Single Race. And all you need to do is go in here, turn on practice, edit the practice session, make it for however long you want. I don't know, 12 hours is long enough, isn't it? There you go, 12-hour practice session. You can have the weather as many slots as you want. Just make it a bit overcast and then add another couple of slots, and then we could have a bit of clear, a bit of light rain, a bit of light cloud, and basically each one of those will last an hour if you've got a long enough session. You could have it so it stays the same time all the time, time aggression off, or you can have time going real time through, I think 60 should be the highest, yep. So basically your time will last 12 minutes if it was on 60 as opposed to 12 hours. Now, obviously that affects potentially how the weather works, because obviously if you made it 12 minutes, then each one, instead of being an hour, is suddenly going to be in this case 3 hours. I think I'm right on saying that. So if you go in the full 12 hours, I think each one of them, will it do that or not? I'm now doubting myself, because effectively they're 1 hour slots, but if you do sync to race, it would do 4 slots over the length of the race. So if you did a 12-hour race, would they each be 3 hours? I'm not 100% sure on that. I would have to check. But I'm not going to drive for 12 hours to find out. So, if you go shorter than effectively an hour per slot, so if you had a 4-hour session, you would end up with 1 hour of each. If you go for a 2-hour session, each one of those would last half an hour. If you go for a 10-minute session, each one will last 2.5 minutes. Give or take. There is some variability in when they will happen. They aren't guaranteed as like, oh, exactly 1 hour's time it will go suddenly from overcast to light rain. It doesn't work like that. There's an overlap. So if you say overcast to light rain, it might be 20 minutes before the hour it starts to rain slightly. It might be slightly after the hour it starts to rain slightly. So it's not guaranteed to be exactly on the hour. So there is variability even in the hour-long slots. So you can just set up a practice session as you like, and then have your qualifying off. Set yourself to one lap. I'm going back a minute or two here when we were talking about how to get practice with some AI in it. have a 1 lap race. So basically you leave your practice, you just practice and practice and practice. You can obviously restart the session as many times as you like. Every time you restart it, it should reset everything to being a green track effectively. I'm not sure if they've got I'm not sure if they've got the track conditions carrying over from practice to qualifying to race. Sometimes it appeared to do it in Project Cars 2, sometimes it didn't feel like it did, so take it with a pinch of salt. Again, practice, you can disable or enable it, decide in your race itself, laps or time. You can have a 24-hour race, you can have a 2-minute race. I think 5 minutes is actually the last you can go. Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah, it does it in 5 minutes. Obviously you can set the date to either be the default, whatever that happens to have been set for that particular racetrack that you are on, because it's dependent on track. You can use a custom date, you can use a default date, you can set the time to any time you like. Time progression, again, anything from off to real time 60 times, and all stops in between. I would like to potentially see a slightly different set of numbers in there, because they don't necessarily tie up very well with if you want to do a 24-hour race. Some of the multipliers are a bit bizarre, so what you really want is to go, right, I'm going to have a 24-hour race, but I want it to be 1 hour with it looking like 24 hours have occurred, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, or 4 hours, and I think that was my front doorbell. Hang on. That was a very kind person bringing around some gluten-free pasta, because there's none in the bloody shops. That's what friends are for. Right, where was I? Oh yes. Yeah, it'd be nice if you could actually change the multipliers so they made more sense. So you could have like 24-hour racing, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever. Because at the moment some of the multipliers are a bit strange. So whether that changes or not, you can always make a request on the Rita site if you're buying into this and say, can we have it as some slightly different times? Again, whether sync to race, or you can have real time, or you can have it so it doesn't actually do anything, or 60 times, or 50 or 40 hertz. So again, it's got the same strange, they don't necessarily matter quite as much, maybe, I'm not 100% sure, but again, that's one of those things you can play with. It's exactly the same as Project Cars 2 at the moment, but it is open for change. Excuse me. Oh, I must run up and down the stairs a lot more, I'll get fitter eventually. Start type, standing or rolling. Formation lap, again it's one of those you can have you start, do a formation lap and then off you go. Depending upon whether you're with real people or AI, that could end up being a complete clusterfuck, or it might be perfectly sensible. Well, it's like everything in life. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. See the RWB race from the other day at Spa, where the rolling start was supposed to be everybody stay sensible, and somebody of course had to go boom straight into another car. Mandatory pit stop on or off. Again, is that actually working? As I don't seem to be able to select it, maybe it's not actually applied yet. Makes mental note, we'll check. But again, you can set whatever the hell you like in here. You can have it with a practice and no qualifying, you can have it with a qualifying and no practice, you can have a race without either, you can have just a practice and ignore the race completely and not actually bother having one. So lots and lots of options. Then you've got rules and regulations, the usual thing, whether or not you want penalties, track cuts, of the allowable time penalty, which is that's how many seconds you, or how many, is it how many seconds of penalties you get before you get a drive-through, or some such thing like that. Drive-through penalties, yes or no. Pit exit penalties, that's if you move over the white line, I think, on the way out the pits. You're meant to stay inside the pit lane on the exit. If you transgress across it, you'll be slapped on the wrist. Competitive racing license, at the moment there isn't one, and competitive racing license required. That realistically that should only apply to multiplayer, so I presume this is common. So obviously there's no point in having a competitive license requirement that you don't meet when you're setting up a single player game. Unless the AI are going to get them as well, in which case that's different. So that's rules and regs. Opponent settings, your number of opponents. Again, like Project Cars 2, the number of cars on the circuit is basically defined by the number of pit stalls at a circuit. So you might find there's less on some than others. 31 is the most you'll have at the moment. I think I'm right in saying this should be different depending upon which circuit you're on. Skill level, at the moment, sort of 100 is, and that doesn't seem to work with the arrows, so does the slider work? No, it does. There are a few novelties within the UI. At the moment, opponent skill level around 100 seems to be what they're sort of aiming to get right, and then work around, as we said earlier on about the AI level being worked on. Aggression, if you up the aggression, it does speed the AI up a bit. It's not just about how they attack or how they defend or anything like that. It's also going to change how fast they actually get around a track. And assuming they've carried over some of the AI traits from Project Cars, things like the AI would, if they got a good lead, they'd sort of relax and their aggression would go down and they would slow down potentially a little bit. But they'd try and hold, so if you were sort of second and sitting 4 or 5 seconds behind, but you managed to sort of speed up a bit, they might increase their aggression again to speed up again. So there's some interesting little novelties within the AI behaviours for things like that. Opponent field type, you can select identical, same class, or multi-class, which means you can have like a mixture of P3s, P4s. One of the classes will always be the type of car you have chosen. You can't go, I want to drive the fastest car on the planet and put it in against a bunch of like Copa Classics from 4 different things, or karts or something. So you can have a really weird mix of vehicles, but you can't literally choose to have sort of, I want to be in a fast car and everybody else is in a slow car. You can do it with up to 4 classes. Obviously you can choose a car that's going to be pretty quick against a lot of other cars that are pretty slow, but they will presumably, unless you manage to only pick enough AI, that there's probably only going to be one of each class anyway. You are going to have to face up to the fact the AI might be quicker than you. Fernando. And of course, I've nearly forgot, player grid position. You can shove yourself at the back, in the middle first, or you can be random or a specific grid position. So if you want to be 4th on the grid every time, you can be 4th on the grid every time. Why you'd want to be, I don't know, but you might want to be second last every time, just to be awkward. You have the choice. You can choose to be awkward, you could choose to be clever, sensible. So that's your custom race. What else are you going to get? Well, obviously there's a shed load of options to play with gameplay, so you can change authenticity, so you've got your assists. These should all now be working reasonably. I haven't actually tested anything other than authentic, because that's what I always run. So I must get down to a bit of testing of how well things like ABS, stability control and traction control work. Stability control is always a bit of an interesting topic when it comes to the Madness engine, because of the way it's sort of tied to, is it ABS or is it traction control? I can't remember which one it is now, but if you turn on stability control, one of the two you can't turn off, because it's basically using that for the stability control. Stability control generally works on either just ABS or a combination of ABS and traction control to keep the car under control. So it's just going, I shouldn't be doing that, I should just slow down a bit, but I'll use the ABS to just tweak the car a bit. So that's how it works. Usual stuff. Opposite lock assist is actually for gamepad users, and it's well worth turning on. It does help. It's much more like driving with a wheel. When you get the back end of the car step out, the wheels will naturally all sort of align themselves a bit, and your wheel will turn into the slide quite naturally. Doesn't necessarily do that on a gamepad without some opposite lock assist. Because if you're trying to sort of pin yourself around a right hand bend and pushing the stick over, it doesn't actually get to relax, whereas you'd feel it through your wheel, because your wheel would be going, oh look, things are happening, you should be doing this, and that's what's happening. Whereas with a gamepad, you're not necessarily going to feel the fact that the back end's going. Okay, you might be able to put some additional feedback in via the rumble motors or something, but generally speaking you can't feel it, so you need something that will start to steer into the slide a bit for you, and then by the time you realise what's happening, you would hopefully go, ooh, I'd better do that. So that's why that's there, and it works brilliantly. They spent quite a long time working on that in the Madness engine, and well worth the effort. Some people will go, oh, that's cheating. Well, not really. If you're using a wheel and you've got force feedback and you can feel when the back end of the car is gone, is that any less of a cheat than working without your force feedback on and going, no, I didn't know the car was going to go over there somewhere because nothing told me anything? So that's the same sort of thing. It's just to give you a bit more of an option. It's slightly bizarre because you can watch the steering wheel sort of, it's turned, and then suddenly it will start apply opposite lock, and you're going like, oh, okay. So that's why if you're using a gamepad, keep an eye on the wheel on the screen. You'll see it turning the other way. It takes a little bit of getting your head around, but that's what it does. Display, that's things like your HUD level, etc. So you can turn off driving lines, turn indicators, track map, which doesn't seem to work on every single track at the moment. Whether it's because they haven't actually done the mapping, I assume. Lap info, I can't remember what the different lap information is, whether that's for your Delta, I can't remember. Starting grid lights, always useful to be able to see the green light or the red lights go out. Sometimes you can be in a position on the grid where you literally can't see the lights, so you have to rely on either hearing everybody start ahead of you or seeing the car in front of you just go. Cockpit wheel driver, much like Project Cars 2, strangely enough, if you have a wheel that has the display in it, the wheel will, instead of disappearing when you turn it off, it will be there with its display on it. So there are going to be cars that you can't turn that off. Opponent names, again, you can have them so they only come up in multiplayer. Whether or not you want to see the name of the person ahead of you is entirely up to you. There, I think you can have a button that allows you to turn it on and off. So if you just want to go, who's that? Who just cut me up? Oh, it's him. I better not say anything. He's bigger than me. Race engineer, again, that's going to tell you things as you're going around like, oh, you're doing a very good job. Thanks, Ben. I don't know who the race engineer is. It won't be Ben. Spotter, again, I just trying to remember if that. I don't think they've got the spotter in at the moment, but I might be wrong because I've got mine off. So proximity indicator, that's the old little coloured things that tell you how far away somebody is and change colour depending upon, as they get closer it goes red and tells you what sort of direction they're in. Pit stop visual cue, that's when you go into the pits, it'll have a little sort of semi see-through stop sign to make sure you know where your pit is and you get to the right place. No, Lewis, you've gone into the wrong pit, you're not with that team anymore. Display units, metric or imperial. Again, it would be nice if they could change that to be, give me a bit more granularity on it, because there are people who like slightly mixed, shall we say, things on there. So you'd have like miles an hour but degrees C for track temperature, because if the track's in degrees Fahrenheit, which it would be if you've got miles an hour on imperial, my brain's going, how the hell hot is that? Is that hot? Is that cold? I don't know. Then you'll have like pounds per square inch in bar for your tyre pressures. Newton meters per second for things, and instead of foot pounds. So there are certain things that make sense to me that don't make sense to other people, and the other way around. So it'd be nice if you could go, for each individual thing, can I have it in this please? So like temperature in degrees C, miles an hour, my PSI for my tyre pressure. So that could be extended. I'm hopeful it might, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Chat box, chat profanity filter. Well, all I can say is, oh, it doesn't work then. Controls, usual thing. Apparently they've updated it with all the latest SDKs for Fanatec, Logitech, etc. So everything should work hunkily-dorily. Things like all your LEDs on your various wheels, etc. At the moment there is no way to save a configuration and load it, so if you have multiple wheel rims, for example, pick one and stick with it for a while until they decide what they're going to do, because otherwise you would have to keep just changing the bloody thing and coming back here, reconfiguring it, doing the edit assignments. You might be able to hack it so you save the stuff and then save the configuration file and do it by hand in the background, but it's a bit of a cock and I can't guarantee it will reread the file, which might be a stumbling block. So I'm not sure at what point it reads the file. So worth bearing in mind. Usual configuration for everything at 50 is linear. So steering, if you want linear steering, it's 50. Below that is non-linear with, which way around is it? I think you end up with below 50 if you've got a very short throw wheel. It's only 270 degrees or something. It'll end up so it's less sensitive around the centre and more sensitive at the end. So basically you sort of like the first 10-15 degrees is sort of fairly linear, and then after that it goes like you're turning more degrees for each degree of your wheel. Throttle dead zone if you need it. Throttle sensitivity again, linear is 50. Same with brake, clutch, etc. Now I usually play with the clutch sensitivity and change it so that I end up with the clutch not having only about that much throw before it engages. So I usually end up with something a bit like there. Controller dampening does nothing on a wheel. Controller vibration does nothing on a wheel. RPM gear display, that'll be your like Fanatec little gear display. Edit assignments, the option to set all your buttons up for the motion stuff, which is driving the car. Vehicle, which is things like assigning your wipers and things like that. As you can see, I don't bother with most of them. Assistance is you can turn off and on ABS, stability control, etc., as well as steering and braking assist. Camera view, the usual stuff with cycling your camera, looking back, left, right, up, down. As you notice, I never look left or right. No, I don't. If I can't tell your car's there by the sound and everything else, the proximity markers, and keep an eye on my mirror, then I probably deserve to have an accident. Seat, it's worth setting up your seat movement keys, because at the moment not everything is set in stone, I was going to say, is correctly set, so you might find your head's not actually on your shoulders, it's about here somewhere, or about here somewhere, so you want to be able to do that. I'm assuming they're going to have a tweak with that, because obviously they're still working on character models, animations, etc. Seat angle, you can pitch your seat up and down, so obviously your view changes, and obviously you can increase and decrease your view angle, which is your field of view. So, and don't forget, the field of view in this is that, not that. So your 70 degrees is actually 70 degrees field of view there, not 70 degrees there. So if you set it to whatever you're using, R factor or R factor 2, whatever, so if you set it to say 43 degrees, on something like this would be the equivalent of 70 on this. Pull up a calculator, I'll try and remember to put a link to one in the bottom here, and just set it the same as you would Project Cars. I use something that's sort of middle ground between mathematically correct and what the fuck are you doing. About 70 degrees is what I use. It's a good compromise between the two. Last but not least, game, which is all your pause, reset. I have reset set because I think it defaulted to that. I usually, if I've crashed the car and go, oh, I can't remember which button to press to reset the bloody thing anyway, so. And occasionally I'll press the wrong button and go, what is it coming up saying you can't reset the car now? Oh, that was the opponent names. That's for your multiplayer. I want to know who just punched me up the bum with their car. That's the opponent names. Cycle your Motec LCD. I'm not even sure if any of the Motec type displays have actually got more than one page yet, but when they have, you want that. HUD view, again, that'll be to cycle the various HUDs, the light HUD, the full HUD, the telemetry HUD. Split times, whether or not that's done yet, I don't know. That's the one that tells you whether you're comparing to your fastest lap, your potential fastest lap, your previous lap. Split times, or was that, no, yeah, that was what I was just talking about, wasn't it? In-car management, that's the pop-up menu that allows you to adjust brake balance, stop for the pits, adjust your pit strategy, etc. whilst driving. Also things like traction control, slip and ABS. Slip values are in there, so you can adjust all those on the fly. And things like the fuel mapping. So if you want to go into fuel saving mode, you can change your mapping. I think that's in, I'm not 100% sure. That literally is exactly the same as the Project Cars 2 one at the moment. And then you need the keys to move up and down. And there's the in-game chat box, which I never use. I don't want to talk to you people. No. Force feedback, quite simple. You've only got two choices, default and I think there's a custom there. Yeah, default and custom. There's a custom file that you can change. It'll be in your Documents Automobilista 2 folder. I think it's in the base. It is in the base folder, so it'll be straight in there, and it'll be FFB custom.txt or something. You'll spot it soon enough. Whether or not there's enough information to actually do anything useful with it yet, I don't know. But this at the moment is, like all these things, because things are changing in the tyres, because things are changing in other things, and they're sort of trying to get things worked between the cars so they make sense. These won't always feel potentially great on every single car. There'll be some cars that are a little bit, oh my god, that's a bit light, or oh my god, that's a bit heavy, but don't panic, they will all be equalised to make more sense. So if you've got something with a lot of downforce, that you go from feeling very light steering at very slow speed to very heavy steering at high speed. Hopefully that will be enough, compressed enough that it makes sense without being stupidly low or stupidly high. Again, that's just about polishing and getting things right. Visual FX, that's the same as Project Cars 2 with post-processing. Some flares, depending upon whether or not you're in VR, you might want to turn those off. They're a bit unsubtle sometimes. I usually leave, I think that's the defaults on this lot. Bloom, whether or not you like it, you can turn it off. Heat haze, I'm not sure if it's actually working. Exposure compensation, that's just to get it a bit darker or lighter. Raindrops keep falling on my head, and you can see them on your window. I mean, yeah, that's the old bit darker around the outside. Why would you want it? I have no idea. Crepuscular rays, or god rays as they're called, worth turning off if you're in VR because they're a bit over the top. I don't know if that's got better, but certainly in VR I tend to turn off. You do have to be a bit careful because what is in here and what's in the performance bit aren't actually saved in the same place. So if you swap between VR and flat screen, you'll find you'll have to come in here and change the crepuscular rays or something. If you want it off in here when you're in VR and on in your other, you'll have to come in and change them because you can't save them as part of the save at the moment. That might change. Screen dirt, usual. There's dirt on my screen. And cockpit mirrors, which are quite useful, strangely enough. Performance, that's your visual performance. Obviously, if you've got something with a lot of grunt, you can turn all this stuff up quite high. They are thinking about changing some of it. Why am I leaning over so far? Changing some of the AA. There are still people saying, "Oh, the AA is terrible." Where I think most of the complaints are around flickering on shadows. It's never really bothered me, and I find if you're running in overcast conditions, you don't see any shadows anyway. So a lot of people are, I'm just running in overcast until they've sorted it out. Whatever. Everything, turn it on, turn off motion blur unless you like it. Your choice. Render frames ahead. Obviously, if you are only rendering one frame ahead, you've minimised your lag. So unless you really need that on more than one, keep it as low as possible. Detailed grass, obviously if you don't have it turned up, you don't get to see the grass quite so far ahead. Particle level, cold coffee, lovely. Particle level and particle density, especially in the wet, it's worth running a lower setting just to make it easier to see where the hell you're going. If you turn them up to like the highest setting, one's high, one's ultra, you can actually get to the point where you literally can't see down the road in the rain. And whilst that's quite realistic, I've been on a racetrack where I literally couldn't see where the hell I was going because there were like 20 other people in front of me all chucking spray up. It's not fun. In fact, it's bloody scary. Now, like everything else in this, all of these auto-save, so you notice the little thing went bing, little yellow thing down the bottom there. Camera is, come on button, work. You set your field of view, you know, so I never swapped to the rear passenger camera, so the fact it's on 96, it just gives you a nice wide. It's great for replays to sit in that one, but other than that, entirely up to you. But like I said, 70 across the board for me is what I prefer for this particular screen at the distance I'm at. So you can set up speed sensitive field of view, and basically that means as you go faster and slower, it'll change the field of view. So you get this sort of as you go faster everything looks to go faster, because they've changed the field of view. So some people like it, some people don't. I don't, obviously, because I've turned it off. And you can actually set the limits of how far it will go each end in terms of the speed required. So you can set how fast you're going for what FOV you get. So again, that's entirely up to you. In terms of this lot, some people are saying, oh, it's too shaky. Play with the world movement. The world movement goes from locked to the car. So as the car bounces around, so does your view. So the world sort of moving around outside whilst the car looks like it's staying still. The other end is exactly the opposite. So you're locked to the horizon and the car will move around whilst the horizon stays still. That can look, one end looks really weird as you're going up and down hills, because you're suddenly going like, I can't see anything because I'm going up a hill, so all you see is the road in front of you, and then you go over the brow of a hill and all you can see is everything but the road. So yeah, they are a bit strange, or can be. Find a compromise that works for you. G-force effect, that's when you hit the brakes, effectively the camera moves backwards and forwards as you go backwards and forwards. I'm not sure if it moves sideways. If you use the camera for the helmet view, as it's called, you will have like the top and bottom of the helmet showing unless you've turned it off, because you can run helmet view without the helmet, and the reason for doing that is because you can have the look to apex on. Some people like the look to apex, some don't. I don't. So if you turn helmet look to apex to 0, that means you don't get any. So if you happen to use the helmet cam and you don't like the look to apex, 0 it. Helmet leaning and camera leaning is how much it's as you go into a corner you get the old as you go around the corners, which always looks strange to me, but some people like it, some people don't. You have the options. And last but not least in this particular set is your volume controls. Exactly the same as Project Cars. You can switch which thing you are outputting your sound to. In my case, it's currently going to my headphones, so that I can hear. Otherwise, it's got about 8 other bloody things on it, and it's annoying when you forget to change it when you're recording something, and then you record something else, and then you do this. Headphone mix. I'm assuming it still works. It just changes the mix a bit to work better with headphones. I don't use it, but I've tried it and I've gone, well, whatever. It's fine. It works. The LFE, low frequency in basically it gives you a bit more bass, if I remember rightly. Otherwise, change all of this lot to however you like it. Menu music, menu volume, so you can turn off the menu music if you don't like it, or if you do like it but you're streaming and don't want to be demonetised. Not that I'm doing that, but it just, I don't want menu music, I don't want music. There are, of course, a few other things. The system allows you to have shared memory, so if you've got things like Crew Chief or Sim Tools or something like that that require shared memory, you can turn that on. UDP and the UDP protocol is exactly the same as Project Cars 2. So if it killed your wireless router because you've got a crap wireless router, it will still kill your wireless router. They may change to use multicast, broadcast, whatever, so you can set IP addresses if you want. I don't know. No promise on anything. Obviously, if you were in virtual reality, that will be on. You will be able to change things like the super sampling, etc., and whether or not you use gaze control. Exactly the same as Project Cars 2, which works perfectly. Why reinvent the wheel? If it works, leave it alone. Triple screen should be exactly the same as well. Now, I think that's covered all of that. Look. I'm going to get my brain in gear and press the right button. Right, what else is on here? Well, what else is on here is multiplayer, which we'll just see if we... I don't know if there's going to be any sessions going. Just the one. Right, so... At the moment, he's running V8 supercars, which you can see, at Jerez. I'm not sure if that padlock is actually saying it really is a private one or not. It might be, it might not. And again, it's basically very, very, very much the same as Project Cars 2. You can create your own. Again, everything's there that was there in the multiplayer. In the single player race weekend. There's a few other extra bits, like your host settings. Obviously, you can set your name to something other than lobby. Call it something nice, so that people know how to find you. Put your password in, whether or not it's public. Broadcasting on, wait for race ready, etc, etc. Usual race settings, whether or not you've got practice and qualifying. Realism, so you can change all the usual stuff, forcing cooldown laps, etc. So you can you've got exactly the same sort of controls as you had in Project Cars 2, so you can set all the same sort of things. It's very much case of Project Cars 2 multiplayer as a drop-in multiplayer, which was easy for anybody to run, worked fine. It has some issues as far as its tie-in with Steam. Occasionally it doesn't roll over correctly between when one person drops out, who happens to be the host. It doesn't always migrate. There's a few other odds and sods, and if they can cure all those issues, it'll be absolutely great. There's no news yet on when a dedicated server will be about, but there is one in the works, and they've got a management tool to go with it, that was apparently a partially finished version that SMS had worked on. Otherwise, it's no different to running a race in single player. You can of course have AI. You just set the maximum grid size, then you set the maximum number of human opponents, and it should allow you to fill up the rest with AI, just the same as Project Cars 2. Usual thing with classes, you can have... only scroll so far that way. Multi-class if you want, etc. You can set all the AI level and everything here, which is exactly the same as the other one. That's already in. Next thing to go in will be time trial, and I'm just trying to remember what the official... what was the official time frame on that? It was right, officially this is a direct quote: time trial next, brackets, hopefully soonish. Now in my book, hopefully soonish is probably sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'm assuming they're more or less going to use the same thing as Project Cars, so it'll be a case of working to get the UI sort of compatible with what's here. Otherwise it'll probably be more or less Project Cars time trial. Whether they'll manage to change the classes around a bit, because some of the way it reported things are a bit annoying. If you selected a car and then it told you the fastest in class, I don't want to know the fastest. I want to know the fastest of that particular type of car as the default. So whether they'll change a few bits and pieces, but basically that's going to look pretty much the same as Project Cars. And the other thing is then championship mode, quote, towards the end of April. So basically in the next 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks. Of course, towards the end could be anything from the last week of April to the last couple of days of April, but at the end of the day, it will get done when it gets done. What they're planning championship wise, I'm assuming it'll be closer to IMS than Project Cars. So I think IMS is more sort of series based, and you can just pick and choose whether they stick with that or whether they have a more I'm not saying structured is necessarily the right word to use, but more of a sort of tiered system, the same as Project Cars has. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. So I've now been talking for an hour and 21 minutes apparently. Bloody hell. Right, I'm not actually going to bother to do any driving at the moment, because I've waffled and waffled and waffled. I will have to edit a couple of bits out. Obviously when I left the room, you're obviously sitting there asking the question, should I buy it in early access? Well, it comes down to, are you prepared to live with the fact that it's not a finished product yet? If the answer is yes, then hell yeah, buy it. If the answer is no, I want a whole 100% polished product and I ain't going near anything with a barge pole that's got anything that isn't finished, we'll let you know when it's done, because it will carry on getting polished, and it'll get polished for quite some time before it's actually finished. And how long is a piece of string? I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to take to get to the point where you personally might think it's a finished product. You might never think it's a finished product. There's always something that somebody doesn't like about something that will put them off. But in terms of what to expect, if you have any respect for the developer, then you will be quite happy to go with them and say, yeah, this is going to be a great product. Yeah, there's things that need fixing at the moment, and there will be things that need fixing for several months, even before I get on to adding additional content. Lots of DLC planned. Thing is, at the moment, well, I say at the moment, it might not have actually released yet to EA. It's still only, 4:05 in the afternoon in the UK, which means it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the earliest, I think, in Brazil. I'm not sure quite whereabouts in Brazil they are and which time zone they're in, but obviously when it does release, you'll be able to buy it. If you want to spend 2 hours playing with it on Steam and go, not for me, I'll come back later, do so. Nobody's going to stop you. On the other hand, there are plenty of people who I think would agree that it has huge potential, and as long as that potential can be realised, I think this will be one of the shining stars in the firmament of sim racing, quote unquote. I think I'm gonna copyright that, and I suspect it will be an absolute stormily good sim game, call it what you like. But that, I think, for now, definitely wraps things up, and it's going to take me a while to sort this video out. A few chops here and there. I have to check to make sure I haven't talked complete bollocks, but for now, until next time, and I will I'm assuming there will be a difference between the beta builds carrying on and what goes out in EA, so there might be more sort of intermediate steps for the beta side than there is for the EA side, but those of us who bought into the beta will end up with 2 installs. One's the sort of EA build, one's the beta build, so it'll be interesting to see if they do get out of step, and then whether they're going to go for a weekly EA release. I don't know. There's no actual information yet on what's 100% happening, so if there are beta builds come out that are in between EA releases, we'll try and keep you up to date with what's going on, and we might see you in the multiplayer soon. So for now, as always, stay safe, get indoors if you're outside, and do some sim racing, and we might see you on track soon. For now, enjoy your racing, and goodbye. And I didn't press the button.